Hello and welcome to Conversations in Close Protection with your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our goal is to engage the greater protection community, inspire innovative thought, and as always, continue the conversation around all things close protection. Let's see what the guys are talking about this time.
Greetings. Welcome to Conversations in Close Protection. My name is Chuck Randolph, across the digital divide, the cognoscenti himself.
Whoa.
Mr. Chris Story. Sir.
Good
evening.
I'm not sure I should respond to that. It sounds like I should use some sort of different language.
It is, I believe it's Latin.
Oh.
So we're throwing that on. I know our good friend, Dr. Trustin Wheat just went, oh, Latin.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Good times.
It means well-informed on a subject. So, given that this is an early edition of Shop Talk.
No pressure.
It feels, if not, just make it up. I mean.
Nobody.
What do we know from watching Die Hard? I don't know. I'm making it up as I go along or something.
Pretty much.
No, that was Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think.
That is true. Okay, fair enough.
Oh, okay. Here's funny. My steps. So we're in CICP Studios, Texas, y'all. Thanks to Chris for the accoutrement, if you will.
Oh yeah.
For the studio. Yeah. So my stepson comes home from school. He started a new school. One of the elective courses he's taking is classic movies.
Okay.
It's like, Chuck, I walk into class today. Guess what movie we're watching? I'm like, what? What classic movie are you watching? He's like, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You're like, that is a classic.
And the teacher asked him, like, have you ever seen this movie? And his response was, have I?
Yeah, I can quote it.
Oh, man, I do love that movie. How are you doing? What's happened? Where are you? Are you on the road? Are you at home?
I'm not on the road. I'm preparing to be on the road, but I'm not on the road, which is a little bit of both. Little awesomeness and maybe a little not, but happy with it,
Well, we didn't record last week, and we let Aaron pick the episode, and I think the culture one was good. We were both on the road. I literally was driving down to the studios here, and I think you're gone next week. I'm gone next week. I mean, things, I don't know if just the world, I mean, depending on who you listen to, things are either kind of returning to some sense of figuring it out so we can get back to work. But, in other ways, it seems like we're sliding back a little bit in the pandemic. But I think regardless of where you sit on the fence, I do feel like there's more protectors moving about the cabin, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think, not a bad thing by any stretch of imagination, but we definitely want to see more folks doing it. But, this is stop-start. We're headed in the winter months for COVID, which pushes people indoors. The Delta virus seems like it's been handled. We'll see what's next. But you're starting to see a little bit about the, increasing numbers, right? And then, of course, then the mandate is causing lots of challenges across the board. So
for sure. I mean, I think there's been a lot of increase for asks that I'm seeing for intelligence or risk intelligence for corporations who are saying like, hey, we're about to release a mandate. What should we think about it? In some ways, it's encouraging because if you take, we're seeing senior leaders asking for a risk assessment or an intelligence-fed risk assessment to drive conversation. Now, I'm not saying like, hey, every Fortune 50 company is asking for this, but, I myself have seen 3 or 4 come down the pipe, and, I think leaders are taking it seriously. I mean, did you see was it New Jersey or Pennsylvania where the mask mandate and the school board president started receiving threats. In fact, one of the threats said that the individual is going to rape every female in her house. I mean,
dude. Yeah.
We just talked about this too.
Yeah. And we talked about it. We touched on it. And we were talking about, essentially, how at the school board or at the elected, essentially local elected officials, right, are receiving death threats.
Yeah.
And to the effect, which I don't know what the level of effectiveness this is, but that I think what DHS said they're going to put together a task force to kind of address these threats, and you're looking at, multiple other organizations that are looking at some of these threats, and people are incensed at this point.
Yeah. I just pulled up the news article I saw, and it says, the DOJ is coordinating with local leaders to facilitate discussion and strategies, Yeah. And DHS putting together a task force. I mean, yeah, it's, and if and maybe I can just throw this up on the show notes or over on our LinkedIn, but it has a copy of the threat letter that she received. I mean, and again, as protectors, we're not asking like, where do you fall on the mandate issue? The idea is if, you're paid to protect these folks, and, who would, like we said before, who would think like, now I got to protect a school board member, or I need to go offer services, or, and these are places where our kid, you may have a child, or you may have a brother or sister or somebody that's going to a school, and, these are all new angles of old threat vectors, I guess we have to consider.
Right. Well, I think, it's such a deal, or such a big issue that, the Executive Threat Watch posted that some community leaders in Erie County are, put together a task force to figure it out, and they're trying to get people trained so that they can identify threats and figure out how to implement risk mitigation procedures and measures and protect those folks who are and feel threatened. And I think, as I watch Rich's product come out, it's only just more and more and more and more. And these are mostly, again, this is open source, but it's mostly, state officials, local officials, at that level, essentially. But people are just, I hate to say it, just dicks, just heinous, right? Just with their threats. And of course, when they come back in, they're like, well, I didn't really mean it. I was just pissed off. But very, very explicit with what they're going to do to all the people. And people are incensed, and to the point where they're not even thinking. They're like, I know what I'll do. I'll leave them a voicemail.
Yeah. And the idea of like, it's the equivalent of like standing up in a crowded theater yelling fire, and there's no fire there. You're creating harm and you're creating risk. And just think of the mental stress. Hey, I'm a school board member. I'm used to parents kind of yelling about school lunch or maybe something else that's going on, but now I'm receiving death threats and someone's saying they're going to rape everyone in my house.
Right.
Hey, hold on a second.
God.
Let's put some perspective on that. Until it's nothing, it's something.
Yes.
And if you're not somebody, people that probably listen to this podcast or are curious about this, these are people who deal with risk every day. I can't remember who said it, but there's a TV show and they said, risk is our business, but if risk is not your business, that's petrifying.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to the numbers that you led with, right? It was 61%, 46% got threats, but 61% failed to report.
Oh, you're talking about we haven't got to that yet, but
we didn't. Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's go ahead and bring it up. So
okay, I thought you kind of led with that. Yeah.
Now remember, and I know Chris, but folks will remember we talked about the unfortunate murder of the UK politician outside
MP.
of the church, with the MP when he was at his weekly outing to see and talk to the public. So there was something interesting that we saw that came across after that said in Ireland, there was a study that said a national survey found that 46% of the legislators that responded to the survey said they had received death threats. So just under half.
Yeah.
But of that, only 61% reported that to the police. So that means there's, I mean, though, those are people that actually took time to respond to a survey, and we all know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And then of those people that responded, only 60% of them reported it. That doesn't mean that something happened. That just means they actually reported it. So that means that's a ton of people, or that's a lot of people that are receiving threats that either don't know, because maybe they don't have a mechanism built that says send these emails over to the police, or maybe if we put a general term, send it over to the protectors, protective intel, whatever the mechanism is. They just said, no, it's fine. So we're missing potential triggers and indicators.
Right. Well, so yeah, I mean, and I think this is what really becomes important too is if, and I know that this data is out there, but it's probably not necessarily distributed. But if you look at, if we were to take the threat watch reports and put them all together and then extrapolate all the data, you'd be able to go, you'd really be able to go like, look, the Senate or the House of Representatives get this many threats, and then tie multiple threats to multiple, threateners, subjects,
Threatening,
threat subjects, and you'd be able to kind of really kind of pare down and take some people off the map. But here, the one example that I think is crazy is U.S. Representative Eric Swalwell had tweeted about receiving a voicemail in which the caller hoped he and his family would be chopped up and fed to dogs, which I think is a great example of the difference between a threat and somebody just wishing, right, or hoping.
Yeah.
But he said that the representative noted the message was similar to hundreds he has received, right? And I think that is that's very dangerous from our lens. And I'll say that's dangerous from our lens. And that was by the way, that was a Yahoo News report. But because if it happens all the time, like you're saying, if it happens all the time, not that big of a deal. But it takes a protective intelligence analyst or a threat management professional to go, cool, you got 100. These 3, I'm worried about.
Yeah.
And a professional can't really differentiate between what that looks like and how that works. And this is what, at least from my perspective, what makes the threat or your client's profile, whether it's a threat profile, risk profile, whatever we want to talk about, as you look at it across domains, we've talked about this before. Nobody probably could tell me who the CEO of Coke is if they stood next to me in line, right? Matter of fact, I went down to my local furniture store. Somebody asked if they want to put it on credit, if they want to open up an account. But that's different for those figures that are across multiple domains, right? Business, environment, a celebrity, and there's very, very few that fall into, multiple broad niches, politics, et cetera. And so once you've got a high profile person in one niche and then they cross or domain and they cross over to another domain, their profile increases exponentially. Their risk might not increase as much, or their threat, but their profile definitely does. And so I think we have to take a look at that and understand what that means.
Yeah, and their profile and their exposure increases, which means they've opened up their aperture because they're moving across domains, and you don't know what comes with them, or you don't know what attaches them with they're there. I mean, one of my favorite things is always to hear is like, everybody loves us, nobody hates us.
Yep.
Incorrect.
How do you know?
How do you know? I'm 100% positive.
Right.
Not everybody likes you. Take Disney. Not everybody likes Disney, but you would think like happiest place on the planet.
Right. Well, I think
until it's not, or I have we're working, or we're working to cure the common cold. Well, I guarantee somebody is mad in the supply chain about something that's going on.
Right. Well, now it's right. Now you have 2. I mean, we'll take 2 from the headlines, right? You have 2 groups with the vaccines, right?
Yeah.
You've got anti-vax. We got 3 groups really: anti-vax, pro-vax, and then pro-choice. Not to be confused with abortion, but people who are saying, "Hey, look, you're taking people's choice away from them," and that's another group that's saying, like, well, that's not right. Because I chose to be vaccinated, you chose not to. I can respect your choice, but now you're taking, you're enforcing this on people, which, what's next? What next one I'd have a choice on? And I think that's, and I'm sure there are other groups, so those are the three that really rise to the surface. So things will get sporty. That's all I can have to say.
Again, if you're a protector and you're not getting that the New Jersey ROIC, hit us up at protectiontalk@outlook.com. We can forward an email where you can request it or forward one to you. But they do such a great job, and his team does such a great job of putting news together to help inform us as to threats. And it should be, in my opinion, in everyone's like monthly, or I think it comes out twice a month.
Yep.
It should be in everyone's general reading. It's all open source. It's all unclass.
Just all in one spot.
Yep. And it's a good collection of news.
The other one I want to talk about, because I saw it posted on social without any context, right? And this is the classic executive protection. Hey, if you're an executive, you should have somebody with you, right? But the New Jersey pharma exec who was followed 50 miles from a casino and killed in his home. So again, based on what's reported, this guy cashed out 10 grand. Right now, I don't know if he started with 100 and cashed out 10, or started with, 100K, or if he started out with $100 and cashed out 10 grand.
Right.
But somebody followed him, right, and followed him to his home, and then tried to rob him, and then consequently or subsequently ended up killing him, right? Is that an executive? He was an executive, right? Is that an executive protection function? Is it a crime? Is it, what is it? From my perspective, I think this falls in a great, in the bucket of general threat, right?
Yeah.
Because the guy says, I didn't know him. He was just a target of opportunity, and he's got cash, So I think it's a good case study because there is still a general threat out there. And then there's the specific threat, which means, hey, Chuck, I'm coming for you, right? Not somebody should do something to you. That's just way different, right? Because I'm not owning that. I'm coming to you, right? Or like you saw in the threat, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to do things that are unspeakable things to the female members of your household because I don't agree with their decision. It's freaking craziness.
Well, and I think the guy was a pharma exec. I think it Oryx Labs. I just pulled up the story that we had, and again, I think you're right. There's general threats. There's just, there's threats that you, me, or the CEO of a pharma could face because we just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Folks look at us and go, target of opportunity. Limited resource output, potential high reward. I'm going to roll the dice because I'm a criminal element or a bad guy, and let's do it. Yeah. But without knowing more, without really maybe talking to the folks, or if they have a security or safety or an HR function to say, were there threats? Do we know? Were there,
Right.
I'm going to go on a limb and say likely not, or if there was, potentially it was someone that was being targeted because they were, an oftentimes gambler. I don't know any background to this, but I know there are folks out there that said like, oh, he's an executive, he should have EP all the time.
Right. The old school, if you're a millionaire, you should have an EP team. Yeah. Calm down.
Look, let's think about that. Do the math. EP's expensive.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's your life is worth more money. Of course it is. We're not saying it's not. But when you're dealing with a corporation, everyone has resource boundaries. And in order to start up an EP team, or in order to start up the protection function, it has to start somewhere with a mandate, either from a board or from an individual. It says, hey, there's something here that says we need to start this. It could be money driven, could be threat driven, could be, as you were saying earlier, I'm crossing domains and now my marketing Q score is bigger. And as a result, we feel it's important enough to look.
Right.
Company attorney might say, hey, what you're holding in your head is too important. We're going to put somebody on you because of business continuity, but there needs to be a driver for that.
Well,
otherwise you fall into that, like you say, the general threat issue category.
Right. Well, so I think we'd all fall in the general threat cacategory issue.
Yeah. Everybody.
Depending on where you go, right? And I think Safest Team, Filippo Marino kind of has laid that out, right? Like if Chuck goes to Rio de Janeiro, right? You're probably, as a 50-year-old dude going into Rio de Janeiro, yeah, there's an increase in threat for you to go there, but it's different if a 22-year-old goes, and there's probably a likelihood of a higher risk for that 22-year-old because he's going to do, essentially weirder stuff. I don't know, Chuck. Maybe you'll do the weird stuff too, but we understand how that works, right? I think, but what the general threat and specific threat case studies show is the power of the risk assessment. Number one,
right,
and then number two, the power of protective intelligence to determine, in support of that risk assessment, we'll use a heath score, for example. Heath score is kind of rising, and the supporting sentiment is not awesome, right? So let's put somebody on you for a little while until those scores go down, and that we kind of get back to our baseline, right? And that way we're having the approach that, it's not all three-car motorcade all the time, which gets extremely expensive, and nobody wants to deal with. But you're actually applying the appropriate amount of mitigation to the risk that you face, and I think that's the direction that really the industry's headed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if we called our comrades over at the Business of Intelligence, I'm sure Ryan and Mike would say, "Hey, look, you have to start with that intelligence and risk statement. It drives requirements, and those requirements may not just be protective intelligence requirements, Chris, as we would know, or straight up intelligence requirements. It also could require we're going to drive you, or we're going to put someone on at the office, or we're going to put surveillance detection or protective surveillance, on somebody. I mean, there's all kinds of things that one little beginning statement would take. And I mean, and I don't know. I mean, Chris, I don't think we always need technically an intelligence or protective intelligence person to do that risk assessment. A trained protector can do it as well. I mean, I know our air rep comrades are probably like, wait a minute, they're getting ready to throw shoes at us. But the risk assessment is much more than just, hey, what's the open source on me?
Right. Well, specifically because if I throw a rod and I decide that I'm going to come, do all the things that one of these people are promoting, right? And I just decide to just do it instead of telegraph about it, then everybody's got problems, right? Because then the threat is, you don't know there's a threat until it's, knocking down your door with whatever, blunt instrument they're using for that, or whatever the case is. And again, that's why we can't just go, well, our protective intelligence function says we're good, and then somebody gets punched in the mouth, and you're like, oh God, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, protective intelligence is part of a greater risk assessment process that would include, like, who hates us? Okay, that's a question for the intel team. What's
a
out there
holistic
on
security
us?
approach, right? It's a holistic approach to security.
Yeah, but hey, now we're going to come to hey, boss, we're going to send someone to your house. They're going to give a look. They're going to talk about gaps or issues that could be anything from, like, this place is a fire trap to you need a hard room. It might not even be a safe room because maybe they can't afford it or it's not in their budget. Okay, we're just recommending a hardened door, and we harden these things, and you have a window fire escape. All the things, as people might say. But I think it just, the knee-jerk reaction shouldn't always just be throw a bodyguard on it.
Right. Well, okay, so I agree with that because that becomes the norm.
Right.
I think the one thing that you can do is you can throw a bodyguard at it until I get it figured out.
Exactly.
And then I can decide, what needs to be done. Right.
Until we know Chris is going to be driving you, or Chris is going to be at these locations or at these events.
Because you add a layer, right? Initially, you want to be able to add a layer if at all possible. Yeah.
Because the other thing too is like, you if you can get to that good risk assessment, that's going to inform a lot of other things. You might say, hey, we don't only just need protective agents. We do need an OSINT function, or we need a protective intel function, or we need to go talk to the cyber folks, or, maybe we determine that, maybe we need a protective security driver if you're someone that allows that, title, or,
Right.
we just need someone that's going to follow, or we need to do some surveillance detection because there's something, not quite right. Or our risk assessment says, hey, nation states hate us. Or
but everybody loves us locally, so we're not going to worry about anything.
Yeah. So that was an interesting piece. And I think it does kind of talk to a point of, some things can be called upon to be in the general threat. We're not saying anything against that individual. We don't know the backstory. But, I think the comments like everybody needs a bodyguard after $1 million. Well, $1 million maybe isn't as much as it used to be.
As it used to be, right? But that used to be the old school piece, right? Well, I think, but, having this conversation is important. And the next piece of that conversation is, how do you educate executives to not make decisions for you?
Right.
Because you start off with this, which was, oh yeah, everybody loves us, so we're good, right? And I think the challenging piece for a lot of protectors, whether you're a protector or you're a manager or running your, a director, is educating those folks as to your specialty. Because I think really what they see is, I got it. I know exactly what you do. You just stand right there and you follow me around. You look mean, and then you freaking, sometimes you get lost on when you're driving, and I get pissed, and you don't say anything, right? Or you talk too much, or you put breath mints in the back that I don't like, or whatever, all those things, right? Or you don't have the right charger. But that's the lowest level, and that's the service level, right? We've got to do a better job at educating people as to, well, I go to this all the time and it's fine. Okay, it's fine. And maybe the fact that we're there is not because of us, but maybe it's because of everybody else that's there, right? And maybe it's because, it's publicized and everybody else that's there. And so I think that becomes challenging for protectors to especially in a matrix organization, when you're like, getting all the advice from, senior people up the chain, and you're just like, Jesus, just let me do my job, Yeah.
I mean, and I think the industry as a whole has done a much better job at being ambassadors, and much better job at stewardship. I worry sometimes, but I think we're far better than we were to talk about ourselves as professionals.
Correct.
Because, we are professionals. Things are happening. We're talking about standards, guidelines, benchmarks, making all this more official and holding ourselves. But at the end of the day, we are a professional organization or professional industry.
Yeah.
So yet we capitulate often because the boss says, Chris, I'm good here. You got me for the night. You're like, okay, sir. That.
Well, that's the CEO as a CSO, right?
Right. But are we doing, you're right. We need to get to a point to where we can have informed decision. I think just thinking about a couple of times where I myself have said, like, we're not here for you. We're here for them. Maybe it was the staff, or we're here because of all, there's 10,000 other people here, and it's a high profile event. Like you said, well, there's cameras and there's cops here. Awesome. They're not here for you.
Right.
And if something happens, boss, they're not going to care. They're just going to shove you out of the way and keep moving. So we're here to make sure that we're facilitated. And look, I know it's like you're not walking to your first day, on protective detail, walk into the CEO's office and say,
hey, here's the deal, bro.
If you want to live. Yeah. I need to sit down and have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not going to go so well.
Yeah. There's ways to influence that, but yes.
But
again, I think we have done a better job, but I think we need to and have to do better. Part of that is finding an executive sponsor if you have one or can have one, or executive advocate. Those things can be challenging, right? I mean,
And we're not here to give the boss a schedule out. We're not here to talk about the secret meeting the board is going to have. We're not here to talk about when what time the talent's going to show up. But there are opportunities in our organizations where we can educate,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't necessarily have to be the executive or the EA or the chief of staff. I mean, it's okay to say, hey, look, maybe in your corporation, you say, look, the executive protection team is going to sponsor a lunch and learn on how to set up a go bag for emergencies. I'm not talking like knives and batons, but like, hey, how do you set up a go bag? If for your car, if there's a natural disaster, or, how to talk about surveillance, or there's aspects of our job that we can educate the up and comers to. So when they're the next chief of staffs or they're the next executives, we're building it better for the folks that come after us in the industry that says, hey, I remember Chris Story told us about this once. Do you guys do that function? We sure do. Great.
Right.
And we talk next Friday. Yes, we can.
Yeah, I don't know about the go bag thing, but I understand what you're saying, like off the cuff, right? Like here's why I carry this. Just a quick, and then you're good to go.
We did a great discussion once about, we didn't call them go bags, but basically it was like, what kind of kit do you carry in your car? Just, like with an IFAC it was more done in the way we did it was more of a conversation. We brought some other folks in from the corporation that we knew were safety minded. So we had one young lady who was part of an executive staff, and she's very much like not a survivalist or a prepper, but as you say, survivor mentality.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about everything she had in her car, and I took notes. I was like, damn, that was impressive.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key right there, is to find those like-minded, supportive folks who can be advocates for you, and then kind of just show them what you do. And I think, as protectors, we always have to make sure that we never let an opportunity pass to educate somebody on what we do, informally. Don't make it weird, right?
Yeah.
Hey, let me show you what I do here. Hey, let me show my go bag. Look at my holster. Okay.
Grab my wrist with your other hand.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Not awesome.
Dude, so you, myself, a couple others, were trading some texts about that mall warning, or that warning in Northern Virginia area about malls. There was a couple schools of thought on this, openly. A lot of folks are saying, it's nothing. I heard from so-and-so that it's just another one of those things. Yet I also got some chatter from folks within the law enforcement community saying, yeah, no, it's a thing. They're just not going to release any information about it.
Right.
We're advocates of the show of public-private partnerships, but we're also advocates of, let's share the information we need about the threat so protectors can make decisions.
Right. And I think, and I get it, right? The idea, especially from a law enforcement agency, is not necessarily prevention. It's law enforcement, right?
Right.
So they kind of want it to happen, so they get to that point where, they're like, hey, we knew you were coming and now you're here. And maybe before things go pow, we can roll you up. But at the end of the day, I think from a protection and security standpoint, we're looking at prevention, right? So the more people know about it, the more people can look out for it. And, do I really, I don't really care about evidence so much. I just want the thing to happen, And if it doesn't happen, then we can move forward. And I think so. I think that's a little bit we kind of missed the boat on that, because we're not necessarily at opposing viewpoints,
right?
But we're at opposing goals, right? We want to make sure it doesn't happen, and they want to make sure that it doesn't happen, but they can throw you in jail for it. And I think,
think about it. From a .com point of view, we want to prevent or defend, protect. From a .le point of view, we want to, like you said, we want to make an arrest. And if we're .gov, like 3-letter agency.gov, we might just want to pull a string and see where it leads.
Right.
We all kind of want the same thing. We want safety and security at an end state, but some people might want to see the bigger picture. Some people, like you say, want to wait and then make an arrest. And then there's a vast number of people out there that are like, hey, look, that's all great, but I need to protect my folks, and I need to protect my organization, and I need to understand what I need to do.
Right.
So that when I put it out there, I'm not told like, well, what do we know about this? I don't know anything. They won't tell me. Well,
right.
It's crap. So we're going to go.
Right. And I think that that's where we're failing. Because I mean, regardless of, number of law enforcement agencies and number of security people, what is it? Security folks are outnumber law enforcement. I think freaking at least what by 60% or something crazy like that. So I think that, we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice by not bringing people in the loop, or at least maybe you could share a little bit of information would be helpful for folks that, in relevant spaces. So I think it's interesting.
And oftentimes, let's face it, if you've been on the high side, oftentimes things are only on the high side because somebody slapped classified on it.
Right. Yeah, that was always my favorite. Always my favorite is that you go do something, and you go do something with you, and I go do something, and we go do something with somebody else, and then we report it, and then it goes to some other person, and then you're like, hey, I need to review my report that I sent you, and they're like, you can't because you don't have the clearance for that. Yeah,
I wrote it.
But I was there. I did it,
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Or, hey, this is a New York Times article. Yeah, we just can't talk about it.
Exactly.
And look, we're seeing you and I both also have spent time in the cyber world and still do a little bit. And I can't say that they're better than we are about it, or, there's not us and them, but the digital side of things, I think sometimes they're getting better at sharing of information and creating that common operating information, because I think there's an understanding that, like, look, this is clear and present, and the gap between issue and response needs to get smaller and shorter.
Yeah.
Nothing happened over the weekend, thank goodness. And hopefully law enforcement or agencies did what they needed to do. And I also recognize there's things that go on to, protect borders and people that we maybe don't need to know about. But I also feel as a protector, if you're going to put stuff out, put something out that helps us. We go to our last point. Help us help executives, help us help principals, help us help those we protect. We're also people that are supporting those communities. Let's keep the circle going so everybody wins.
Yeah. So I think so. This is interesting because I don't know if you read this article. It's in the Military Times, and it talked about it was about General what's his name, John Hyten. He's the vice chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, so essentially the number 2. And he talked about how risk aversion and secrecy are costing the military and its advantage, right? And they're talking about like overclassifying something so that you don't have to talk about it. He's not saying declassify it, but he's saying put it at the right level so you can communicate with it, communicate about it, and we can, better share what we're doing, and then we don't all arrive at the same spot with the same, like your wife going to a party and somebody's wearing the same dress, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that, you don't want to do that. You're like, oh, this was my secret, So it just really goes to like, how do we find that balance between that public-private partnership that is balanced? It's just not one way, right? Hey, can you give us all the intel that you have on this? Cool. Yeah. What are we working on? I can't tell you.
I actually advocated, Chris, I spent the majority of my military career in the Guard. I advocated at one point in the Guard that why don't we use and I specifically said the National Guard for this, because they have a state and federal foot in each door. So most states have some type of, there's multiple fusion centers in the state, but most Guard headquarters have some type of fusion center. And I was like, look, you could use the Guard for this. The Guard could spin up. If I need to bring Chris in and talk to him about something, we could spin up let's find a mechanism by which we can spin up some type of one-day pass, if you will, to bring Chris in, read him into what he needs to be read into. So we all have the common key themes and messages, and then send him out to say, okay, I understand the threat. I've signed the NDA. I know what I can talk about. I know what we need to get out there, and then go do it.
Yeah, that's a unique concept, so that you don't need a freaking full background and clearance, because they're just giving you one piece that you can respond to. and if you freaking mess it up, then they freaking throw you under the brig.
Well, and if you came in and said, hey, Chris, we know there's something, we know there's leaders in the industry, whether they're executives or they're leaders in the security industry, not everybody needs to be a Fortune 50, bring these folks in and say, hey, we have a flash alert. Let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole nother show. I mean,
I guess, yeah.
I think it's something we need to get to. And I hope it's something that we will get to, because I think it will help save lives.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we talked about information sharing in the past, right? Well, I can't tell you I can't tell you who's stalking us, because that would be a weakness. Okay, well, good luck with that.
And I might release PII. Well, if they're openly stalking you and wait for it, it's the same issue as throwing a classified header on a New York Times article. Like, look, dude, it's out on Twitter.
Right. I still can't talk to you about that.
Attorneys listening might say, no, it's different. But I'm just like, look, if I can get it and Chris can get it, and all I'm doing is going,
it's that
you
guy.
Go over and go, wait a minute, that's my boss's name.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a GED to figure that out.
Golly.
Yeah. Well, what can you do?
Well, let's shift gears for a couple minutes, because, we just came out of October. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Your costumes were amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
I dressed up as a trucker driving from Seattle.
Nice. Well played, sir.
Yeah, but I hope you had a good time painting.
But
it was
happy
also
little trees, my friend. Yeah. Happy little trees.
It was also breast cancer awareness. It's a good reminder for female protectors, all those out there to,
family members, spouses.
Yep. Whoever's in your sphere, and say, hey, honey, or spouse, or brother, or sister, daughter, friend, how are you doing? Have you checked your, get your stuff checked, check yourself, go to the doctor, do all that stuff. And now we find ourselves in November, or sometimes called Movember. And, it's basically men's health awareness.
Mm-hmm.
We're also coming up on veterans, and Veterans Day and Veterans Day activities. So, we have talked about health. We've talked about mental health many times on this show. And, we want to take a few minutes and just talk about health, and making sure that you're checking in on those people in your sphere that, have anniversaries coming up that maybe aren't so happy, or have times of remembrance, or people that you might just say, hey, look, when's the last time you got a checkup? This can be a hard job, and it can be hard on individuals. There's no need for us to make it harder on ourselves.
Well, I think that's one of the issues with, I think, at least in my experience, women are usually like, well, first off, you don't have to tell them to get checked. They're just going to go do it. Right. And then they're going to ride. Yeah. It's going to ride you like Seabiscuit to get whatever you're going through checked. And it's the men who are just like, I'm good.
I'm fine.
I'm good. It'll buff
just
out,
spray some Windex on it.
Yeah. I'll just, not even elevate it. I'll have a beer. I'll walk it off. Right. And I think, at the end of the day, freaking get checked, whatever that is, whatever's ailing you, get checked. And I think it could be challenging for, for whatever reason to not do so. But I had this cool conversation last night with, he called himself the Crazy Prepper. So conversation with a Crazy Prepper, which will be out soon.
That's not you.
It is not me. But he said that one of the first lines of being prepared is your health.
Absolutely.
And I think I never really consider that. I'm like, okay, battle axe, check, freaking blunderbuss, check. Right. But really, that is a freaking, like, a really simple, yet we tend to look at being prepared as things, right?
Yeah.
But nope, I don't need to figure out what that, it just an ulcer, I got it, or it's just a freaking, it's just a hernia.
I'll just
exactly.
it down.
It'll be fine, right? If you can't perform at 100%, you should get yourself checked. I mean, you're a finely tuned machine, you're at the gym, you're watching your calories or whatever it is that you're doing, getting your freaking ninjutsu on or whatever, why would you not get ailments checked out? And here's the deal: the difference between being injured and hurt, that's a big thing. Don't be a wuss. But if there's something going on, get yourself checked out.
But Chris, you just don't pull out your weapons and start shooting them, do you?
Wait,
and not clean them and not get them checked out and not, why wouldn't you do the same for yourself? You
mean thunder and lightning? Is that what you're talking about? Exactly.
I was thinking also like first responders. I mean, what do they say? Like, make sure the area is safe first for you before you wade in and save others. I mean, I think that can be translated to like, are you safe?
Right.
Like you said, like, are you healthy? Can you perform within the ability that you're able to perform? I mean, I don't think everyone needs to be able to do Murph every day, twice a day.
Oh, probably not.
But can you
that makes
operate
me sore just thinking about it? Jesus.
To an expected level. I know.
Yeah.
Men, like you say, men are particularly stubborn. I don't know why. Our buddy Spencer posted something earlier today, and I saved it for this conversation that said, 84 men will take their own life. 75% of all suicides are male. Men are less likely to seek help. Speak out. Talking saves lives. Now, I imagine if we put veteran on the front of that, they'll increase as well.
Yeah.
We are in an industry. Yeah, we are. I mean, many of us grew up in an industry where, like you said, just walk it off and don't talk about anything. We're not saying you need to go hug it out with your principal and talk to him because, you're upset today, but, it is good to have groups of people that you can go and say, you know what, Chris, this week was a shithole and I'm glad it's over.
Yeah.
Or this week was awesome, dude.
Right. Well, so now you're moving into the mental health piece, but I think part of that is, as men, is that we think if we ask for help, that you're weak.
I don't need help. You need help.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not tired. You are.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that you need to freaking, dear diary, Chuck was mean to me today. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like, why do we only ask for help when we're moving or have to lift something heavy that's physical? The point is that, or your wife or significant other has to kick you in the ass to get to
never
medical, right? Medical. And then, and of course she's wearing you out after the fact because she was right, like,
damn it.
If our goal is to be functioning at 100% at all times or near at 100% at all times, then you have to look at what that, at your functions, right? And then part of that has to be a mental function and situation awareness and the mental capacity to focus on it. And then likely, at the risk of sounding super foofy, but it's also true, not that I'm super foofy, but that you have to look at a spiritual angle and you have to look at an emotional angle as well.
That's not foofy at all. I mean, if you think, and I can't think of the guy who said it, but this whole concept of like your body's a temple, and I don't mean like go out and get roided up and do all that, but the whole idea is like you got to have a place where you can be calm and you can get centered and you can, for lack of a better term, be meditative, because you don't know when you're going to have to switch it on. You don't know when you need to find that calm to make a decision. You might be in the middle of something. And it might not just be like, hey, Chris was mean to me today and I need to find a moment. You might be in the middle of, this has been one hellish day and we had to evacuate the principal and we had to Jack Bauer this shit. And now I've got 5 minutes. I need to collect myself because I got to go back and get back at it.
And that's just work, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about it. You're like, hey, my wife is sick. Right. Or my wife was diagnosed with something or whatever, right? You got that stressor weight on you. And then you're kind of like, and I'm limping from a pulled hammy from hitting the gym too hard or doing Murph or whatever. And then you're having a bad day or whatever the case is. And it just freaking starts to weigh and weigh and weigh and weigh on you. And if you don't address that, and have an outlet for it in one way, shape or the other, then you're freaking not, you're not performing at your peak.
No.
So you need to be able to understand what those things are, have some sort of outlet. And I think you've talked about this before. Like, there's kind of 3 things that people talk about that everybody can control. Number 1 is presence, right? Just kind of taking a moment to be present. Another one was mindfulness, which is just freaking a little bit more presence and awareness of what's going on around you, and having a intentional focus on that. And then the third thing would be gratitude, right? I think a lot of people have said, you know what, I freaking had a shitty day, but here's what I'm thankful for, right?
Yeah, could have been worse.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that's the measurement.
Yeah,
That's
no,
one
but,
thing. It could have been worse, but here's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that it wasn't worse, and I'm thankful for my family, and I'm thankful for these things, and it just you focusing on that can help reduce a lot of the stress.
Chris, there have been times when I've been on the road and it's been a long, people have been there. I was thinking of Phil Grindell talking about 19-hour days, 20-hour days, where it's just like, hey, we hit a city, we hit a country, we hit 2 in the same day. And now we've flown in. I got yelled at. The car wasn't there. Somebody tried to approach the boss. Things went wrong. We finally got in the room, and there's been times when I'm like, you know what? I'm goddamn thankful for this cup of coffee. That's it.
Right.
But you know what? I'm to be thankful in that moment for that coffee and say, I really am thankful for that, because everything else was shite, but that coffee was good.
Yeah. And so I think about it like, I take an approach of the silver lining theory, right? And I learned this from a guy named Danny Carroll, a SEAL Master Chief, and his ability to find the silver lining in whatever was going on was incredible, and it really shifts your perspective, and it really has a functional change to whatever you're looking at, however you look at what's going on. You're like, man, I'm really having a freaking bad day. But, the silver lining to this right now is not, oh, I'm above ground. But as you approach, like there's always a silver lining to something that's going on around
There's
you.
opportunities, hey, we're having this bad day. We lost a contract. We lost a client. My wife's really mad at me. My husband says he's going to leave me. We have some there's opportunities for me to get right. And that's not some Pollyanna look. I mean, that's looking at yourself saying, everything's crappy right now. Let's wade through it and find out where's the opportunity here for me to either make things right or ask a different question.
Yeah, I agree.
Instead of getting up and saying, why am I fat? Or why am I unable to do this? Or why, because your brain is a computer, it's going to start answering that. Well, here's why, this. Now we get into a whole thing about negative self-talk, Chris. And I read something that said once, like, if people talk to you the way that you probably talk to yourself internally, you probably would never be friends with that person.
Never.
So
exactly.
you gotta regulate some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and then I think for those people who are carrying heavy loads, regardless what they are, you got to freaking have a place to put it down, some way, shape, or form is helpful. And then the other thing is that if you're looking at making some, a decision that's irreversible, a technique is to just sleep on it, right? It's like a fucking long ass road march, right? How do you get done, right? Or eating an elephant. It's one step at a time. You don't tap out. You just go, I just got to take 4 more steps, and I got to take 4 more steps, and you got to take, and then eventually, tomorrow's a new day, and it's better,
And for some dude, it's 1 step.
Yep. This is
and that's okay. I mean, and I would say I've always loved the idea of the load, the load that you carry, because, there are plenty of people out there that are willing to help carry that load. Just call them up on the phone.
You don't have to know them. Here's the funny thing is you have to know them. And I think this is kind of it's just a microcosm of, Leon and the Kindness Games crew, which would be, you don't know what kind of day somebody's having.
Yeah.
You also don't know what the impact of a hello or a smile or a how are you doing, what that can do to that person's day, right? And there's this cool little thing. I don't know what it is. It's on social, right? Where these people go around and they just drive up and they're like, "Hey," and they'll give them a compliment, right?
Yep.
And it's crazy because
awesome.
you watch the freaking change and they're like, "What?" Like it's pretty cool. So I think having that level of impact for that mental awareness, emotional awareness, spiritual awareness can be helpful.
And there's something to be said for just smiling at somebody and saying, "Hello, how are you doing? How's your day?"
No,
you
not in a
know?
weird way, but yeah.
No. And I don't know, I think it's important. And, we bring it up on the show every once in a while because we think it's important, you know? Uh, I've lost soldiers to suicide before. It's not pretty and it's senseless. We've had
Yep.
friends that have carried a load and they just feel like it's something they can't take with them anymore.
Yeah.
And, we owe it to ourselves to check in. Look, if everybody was the person they pretended to be on social media, we would have zero problems in the world.
Yeah.
Everyone would be Adonis and but the reality is behind that, like you said, you don't know what's going on. So they could be having an amazing day. They could be having a terrible day too.
Yeah, this is interesting. So we talked about people not asking for help, right? Men and women, right? Like, I don't want to burden you, or I don't want to share. I don't want to do whatever. So I was talking to a friend who was a former protector, and he got really involved in his organizations or his former Marine battalion, and I think they lost like the most people on one deployment than anybody ever had, right? For like a battalion size element or whatever the case is, and then they'd lost twice as many to suicide after that. And so here's the thing is that, he got involved in this group, and they're saying, when they realized, like, two things that were pretty interesting about this was that, number one, they're trying to figure out what's going on. They're talking back and forth. And his 8-year-old son says, "Sounds like life is hard." And that was like an aha moment for everybody, is that, you know what, life is hard, right? And so how do we work through it? So it's going to be hard. It is hard. So how do we work through it, right? Then the next piece is kind of disconnected from that is the whole, hey, if you need me, call me. Who's that for? That's not for the person who's at risk. That's for you. That's so you feel better. I'm available, right? That doesn't work, because that puts all the onus on the person that's having a hard time carrying the load, right? So I think this is really cool. Is what they do is that if you're in the battalion or alumnus of the battalion, they monitor your social media and look for changes. And they've taught the staff duty NCOs to monitor for changes. And if somebody sees a change over a day, a pattern of time, whatever the case is, they call the person and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I think that's incredible way to be proactive in monitoring people's health in those, small groups and communities, et cetera, and to really take care of community and each other. And I think it's I'm not sure it's a requirement, or, hey, you have to be in this group or whatever the case. I'm sure it would be, but I think it's a really innovative way to use, use social media.
I think it's great. And, call somebody. I think you're right. If you say, "Hey, Chris, I'm here for you if you need me," that makes me feel good, because I said, "Hey, I told Chris I'm here if you need me." But really, you're not putting something on somebody who may not want to talk about it anyway. Right. So I think sometimes just reaching out to somebody and saying, "You good, brother?" "Yeah, I'm good." And then saying, "No, really?" And then just bullshitting for a minute and then figuring it out. And if you need be, of course, there's always hotlines and things that you can refer people to. But, in this month, these 2 months that we have, as we, in America, we lead up to Thanksgiving, it's important that we take some time and make sure that we're good. If male, female, it doesn't matter. If you're a protector, check yourself out, check your buddies out, make sure everybody's good to go, because you never know when we're going to be in formation, or we're going to be supporting each other.
Yeah. So check yourself before you
wreck yourself.
Thank you.
I said it. Awesome. Well, what else do we have about this early edition of Shop Talk?
No, I think we wanted to kick it off just because the health awareness piece, the Veterans Day piece, and again, I think you're absolutely right. Right? I mean, oh, Jesus, we forgot the Marine Corps birthday too, but
most important.
Not really, but the crayons are a flowing.
I was gonna say crayon eaters unite, but hey, man.
Yeah. But I think, and then of course I'm a veteran post on your Facebook page, but whatever. I think the holiday season is known for joy, but it's also known for for mourning loss, right? Because those people who aren't there for the holidays, so those people who aren't able to be there or have passed on or have whatever. And so I think that becomes a thing for those folks for the families of those folks who have maybe passed on, right? So it should be okay and focused on and remember to reach out to those folks too.
And yeah, reach out to them and ask them. They may not tell you, but ask them anyways. So
Yep.
Well, that's it. I think that does it for this this November shop talk. Like we said, it's early. Lots of things to think about. Lots of things that keep going out there. Chris, next Monday, we have had some tremendous clubhouse conversations.
Yeah.
It's almost like to me, it's a master class with the folks we have on there and discussions and strategies and how we can employ some of the things that we talk about here at a more operational, tactical level. What's coming up? Any previews?
This is in a different direction than the operational or tactical level. We're going to talk about the difference between standards, standardization, and that's going to be, I think that'll be a interesting conversation specifically because it's a lot in the news right now, right? So, so what's the difference between standards, regulations, and standardization, and pairing those things out so people have an understanding what those are, and I think it's about time, but we need to pair out those definitions first, and at least world according to conversation close protection on what that looks like, and getting people aligned behind that.
Yep.
And then the preparation for the close protection conference, which is essentially
just about a month away,
31 days away, right? That, right?
I've heard today, I mean, you and I both were on the email string, but we've heard that now that there's the ability to come from Europe, that there's going to be a pretty decent contingent of our sisters and brothers from over the pond on both sides that are going to join.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I mean, there are lots of stuff popping up around the conference that people can participate in. I think that's exciting. We intended the conference to be a nexus of all things close protection.
Yep.
I talked to a couple folks today that are coming out because they want to increase their network, and I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, hearing their stories. I'm looking forward to us doing a live taping and just getting, if you will, get the band back together.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good deal. I think what is it? EPI is doing the shooting competition this year. I think I have to be honest with you though. I think the fact that the two classes are basically 18 to just under whatever Jerry's age is, and then the other class is Jerry's age and beyond. I think they've maybe stacked the deck a little bit, but beyond that, it should be fun.
That's all right. You're just going to go school them all anyways.
I think we already know who won that, dealio. But no, it should be fun, and there's a lot of people planning a lot of different things around that that time, and I think hopefully the trajectory of the restrictions and the mandates and all that stuff is maintains the same, so that we're all able to meet, and looking forward to making some in-person connections for some folk that haven't done for a while, as well as some new folks that I've never had, just kind of met over COVID or online or whatever the case is, doing some in-person stuff there.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and we look forward to seeing everybody there, and might have a few T-shirts or something with us. But it's going to be, as you say, good times for sure.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
times
with that,
indeed.
this has been Conversations in Close Protection. My name is Chuck Randolph, and of course, across the digital divide, the cognoscenti himself, Mr. Chris Story.
Is this one going on YouTube?
It's YouTube, baby.
Yeah, because that was like a little shoulder wag there.
Did you like that?
Little
it could just be good.
Could just be so awkward.
Who knows, man?
Right on.
Next up, Tourette's.
Nice.
Let us know what we can do to make the show better for you. Reach out to us at protectiontalk@outlook.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us at conversationsincloseprotection.com, and all the listening platforms and the YouTubes that you desire. So wash your hands, watch your six, and keep your head down.
Good times.
You've been listening to an episode of Conversations in Close Protection. Email us at protectiontalk@outlook.com and find us on your preferred podcast platform. Please take a moment and consider rating us to help others find Conversations in Close Protection too. Look for us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media spots. Conversations in Close Protection is brought to you by your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our engineering editor is the mighty Aaron Peck. Please remember that all opinions expressed do not represent those of any organizations or companies the hosts are affiliated with. This is Rachel saying watch your six and keep your heads down.